Everything sucks. Next on Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Carter. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
This is no time for that. In the pocket and a sack. Tim Jamison.
Brady gets terrific. Throws it. Get it. Touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris hacks a wall of him, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
I feel better now. Go Blue, and welcome to this week's edition of Michigan Podcast. I am Steve Deace, and where to begin? We said this would be a clarifying season. We thought this game at Notre Dame would be a clarifying game, and it was. But because facts don't care about your feelings, it wasn't the clarification we were looking for. So where should we go from here? Right? You know, by the time you guys are watching this, it's Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, several days since the debacle in South Bend. And some of us want to say, hey, it's one game, Steve. You know, you had the chart of how many times Michigan has lost to Notre Dame and gone on and won Big Ten championships. And, you know, Michigan's never won a night game in South Bend, and you were there in 2004, and you saw a Michigan team with Henny and Hart and Gabe Watson and Mario Manningham, and Notre Dame was firing Tyrone Willingham, and we lost to those guys, and then that was our last Big Ten championship team. Why are we losing it over one game? The season's not over. And then some of you are saying, it looks pretty over. This looks like the same product we saw last year. I mean, 8 months, and we came out with that. I mean, anybody sitting home in their size 48 jeans knows don't overrush a running quarterback and let him out of the pocket to run for an easy first down, and we did it. You know, where was the offensive line improvement we were promised, right? And so we've got these two camps that are developing. And these two camps are developing. Division always develops when there's a lack of success. Now, when you see these charts of Harbaugh's record compared to Brady Hoke's, I understand, you know, those are easy hot takes, and I work in the media. I'm not going to pretend like I'm all, you know, high and mighty and beyond using such low-lying fruit. But in this case, they don't tell the whole story. Talent isn't the issue for this team. We curb stomp most lesser foes, except for Indiana. But, you know, everybody kind of has that team that you struggle with, right? Indiana plays well against us, but we dominate lesser teams. We dominated lesser teams last year when we weren't very good. In the Hoke era, we should have lost to Akron and UConn. In the Rich Rod era, we did lose to Toledo. So this isn't a talent issue. That does not mean that there aren't personnel holes. But every team has some personnel holes except for the one that is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The other 129 teams have personnel holes. Okay? So we have personnel issues like anybody else, but talent comprehensively isn't the issue. The program's support structure, foundation is so much better under Coach Harbaugh than it was before he took over. The problem we're having is reaching the expectation level we ultimately had. And that was championships. That was winning meaningful games. And if you go back to Blake O'Neal dropping the punt snap against Michigan State, it just seems as if our guys never make the plays. You know, Iowa beats us with a safety and Akram Wadley late game heroics. We drop a first down pass and a touchdown pass that would have won that game before we ever got to that point. You know, we get a terrible holding call, and it was a right call, on a screen pass that might have won us the Ohio State game. We don't make the big play. They grab a pick six and do get the big play. You look at last year, Alex Hornibrook is 9 for 19 throwing the football against us. But the throw he absolutely had to have, he nails it to Danny Davis, beats our safety, ball game. Josh Metellus drops the interception against Ohio State last year. Against Notre Dame, Brad Hawkins is in perfect position. He is coached properly. He comes in off the bench. It's his first meaningful action as a college football player. And he's tested right away, and he's there. Proper technique, everything. Hands are on the ball. Other guy just rips it away. Our 6'8", 260-pound tight end gets out hand fought for a pass in the end zone by a safety who's a transfer from Navy about half his size. We dropped 2 interceptions against Notre Dame, the one that Hawkins couldn't get it, and there was another one Josh Ross had right in his hands that might have gone back for a touchdown. This consistently happens. We pucker. Our head coach puckers. You know, we get the big turnover, the Tyree Kinnell interception. First 2 plays of that drive, and if we had scored there to make it 21-17, Old Mo would have switched sides, I believe. So what does Harbaugh do? We come out against, I think I counted 45 Notre Dame guys in the box. We ran a wide pitch, and I believe Karan Higdon got tackled somewhere in Gary. Next play, Notre Dame decides to dial it down. They only put 36 guys in the box. We run up the middle, nothing. Now it's 3rd and forever, and with our tackles, we all know how this drive's going to end. We pucker. We pucker everywhere. Now, I've seen this before as a fan. I'm old enough to remember when the Pistons couldn't win at the Boston Garden. When the Red Wings would win the President's Trophy every year, couldn't get out of the first round. When John Beilein could never win a game at the Breslin Center. We've been through this before. I hate to sound like Jack Handy, but really the only way to do it is to do it. And this brings me to where I think we should be as a fan base. Until they do, have no expectations, have no projections. We've basically averaged right around 8 wins since 2007. So until you see this team go on the road and beat a ranked team, something they haven't done since 2006, 12 years ago, there's really no point in WLing the schedule, no real point in is this the year, all that's irrelevant. We don't need to argue with each other. We can sit here and divide as fans over is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? Has the Harbaugh shtick run its course or should he be given more? All those things are irrelevant. There's no point in us fighting each other. Fight one another on things that you can control the outcome of. This would not be one of those things. We shouldn't put this burden on us. We're not wearing the uniform. We're not wearing the headset. You don't have the scholarships or the big paydays our coaching staff gets. They do. So the onus is on them. And where I'm at right now is, as the great prophet Allen Iverson once said, I'm tired. because I'm from the Ricky Bobby school of competition. If you ain't first, you're last. Second place is the first loser. I don't care about 8 and 4. So when I think things are terrible, that doesn't mean I think we're going 4 and 8. Maybe some of you, maybe it matters to some of you because you got that one Sparty in your office. So it really mattered to you that we got picked for the Outback Bowl ahead of them? Did it really matter, though, when we urinated down our leg and, they housed their opponent? Probably not. I don't care. I don't care about Big Ten Bowl pecking. I don't care about any of that. If we're not contending for championships, we're irrelevant. I don't even think we have to win them. I'd like to win some, but we're not in the era of shared championships anymore like we were when I was a kid or growing up. We're not in the era of the Big 2 and Little 8 anymore. This is a league that invests as much money as any other conference in the country in winning at football. Even Purdue and Northwestern have state-of-the-art facilities now. As Urban Meyer is 73 and 8, he doesn't win the Big Ten championship every year. I mean, Wisconsin hasn't won the Big Ten championship game yet. Or they did win one with Brett Bielema. I take that back. They did win that one with Brett Bielema. So, it's hard to win. But are you competing? Are you in that conversation? And until we win a game against a ranked team on the road, we're not. And so I think we have to dial back expectations and all of that and just wait for them to show us we should have some. And the way they're going to show us is when they beat a ranked team on the road. I don't care what the score against Western Michigan and SMU. Hey, it'd be great to beat Wisconsin at home. And Northwestern, before we play Wisconsin, might be ranked on the road in that game. Good chance of it, actually. But if they're not, beating Wisconsin would be huge. But we beat good teams at home. We've seen us do that before. That doesn't mean we're competing for championships. You've got to beat a ranked team on the road. And so I propose that we stop arguing with each other, stop turning on each other, because we're not in control of this. The program is. And we, in unison, turn to the program and say, show us. Do something meaningful wearing those white jerseys. And until you do, we're here every Saturday. We stand for the fight song. We cheer. We love our maize and blue. But we're not going to expect anything more than 8 and 4 until you show us we should. And that's on you, not us. We get asked quite a bit here on Michigan Podcast, what can we do to support you guys? Well, here's one of the big ways you can support what we do. If you like how we finger roll here on Michigan Podcast each week, support us on Patreon. Several of you watching us each week here on YouTube do that already. Thank you very much. And if you support us just $5 a month, you get access to exclusive content, including my commentary on instant reaction after every Michigan football game, including last Saturday night, Notre Dame versus Michigan. I recorded that at 1 a.m. You get my football picks each and every week as well. So we give you some stuff we don't offer everybody else as a thank you to those of you that support us every single month here on Patreon. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Thank you and go blue to those of you that are supporting us already. All right, back here on Michigan Podcast, and we are joined by our good friend Michael Spath from WTKA in Ann Arbor, who apparently didn't trust the two of us at both sides of this opioid drip post Notre Dame with what we saw on Saturday night. You decided we needed a feminine touch here, someone that might come in here and add a little less testosterone to these proceedings, Michael.
Well, you know what? I'll say this. My wife always does a great job of dialing me and reining me back in. And so I figured if we're going to talk Michigan Notre Dame after this, maybe someone like Danny Rogers here from BCSN is here to kind of make sure I don't go off the rails. could offer a little bit of input and keep us in perspective, because you and I were both in the same spot after that game against Notre Dame on Saturday, and that was
Red Rum. I went to bed chanting Red Rum on Saturday. I don't know about you.
Man, I had a hard time falling asleep on Saturday. I'll say that, because I kept on playing things over again in my head, and I kept on playing not even football plays in my head. I kept on playing tweets over in my head that I wanted to say about the football team. That's where I was on Saturday night.
So, Danny, tell us a little bit about you.
So I graduated from the University of Michigan back in December. That was about a semester early for me. So right after that, I landed with a regional sports network in Toledo, Ohio called BCSN. It's a tongue twister. Yeah, so I'm there covering local high school, college. I was at the Lions-Browns game last week, and then I'll be on the sidelines for Michigan football at least for every home game.
You know what's something interesting, Steve, that she was on the sideline for the Michigan Notre Dame game, and she said, you were telling me about Dylan McCaffrey was that play that almost didn't happen, that he got the snap off of 0 seconds
Mm-hmm.
left. He was screaming at his offensive lineman, but they couldn't hear him because of the crowd noise there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had played a throwback video right before that, showing how loud it had gotten between one of the Michigan Notre Dame games in Notre Dame Stadium, and that got the crowd pumped, and Dylan McCaffrey's face was pure red.
Danny, what did you think of? I want to take advantage of your sideline view, because I've covered several games in my career from the sidelines, and I loved it at the beginning of a game, in the beginning of a half, because of the energy level, and you get an idea for the pace of the hitting. And then as the game wore on, I kind of more preferred the press box, where I could kind of see how things were developing. But I'm curious, physically, did you sense a physical difference on the field between Michigan and Notre Dame? How much of this was physical superiority, and how much of it was Michigan shooting themselves in the foot with execution, from your vantage point being right there on the sidelines?
One of the things that Michigan football has been preaching, that they've been working on since the beginning of the season, is physicality. And that's from, is it Ben Herbert? Is that the new strength? Yeah. So they brought Ben Herbert in to increase their physicality, make them bigger, stronger, faster. That's not what stuck out to me really at all, besides maybe a couple of plays like a big Winbush touchdown pass in the end zone. What was it, 50 yards, something like that?
The 42-yarder.
Was it 42-yarder? Just reached over. I can't remember who was
with
in
the tight end, ripped the ball from Brad Hawkins, that one? Yeah.
Just completely reached over him, dominated him physically at that point. But yesterday you heard Rashawn Gary. They are the ones that shot themselves in the foot. They kept themselves from winning. So I don't think it was a physicality thing at all.
So, Michael, I opened up this show with a humble suggestion, as humble as I'm capable, which admittedly is not very humble. But I opened up the show with a humble suggestion for our viewers and our listeners on iTunes. And that is, right now, and I've heard it on your show too, and all the various other podcasts and shows I listen to, there's the it's over, season's done. There's the it's just one game, why are we losing our poo, right? And everybody wants to kill each other. And whenever an organization is not successful or meeting expectations, its loyalists will just turn on each other about who's default and whether it can be turned around. Just to flush all of that and simply say this. We all agree the program is better off, and we keep seeing these stats about Brady Hoke's record and Jim Harbaugh. Well, when Brady Hoke was here, we should have lost to Akron and UConn. When Rich Rod was here, we lost to Toledo. With the exception of Indiana, we are destroying lesser opponents. I don't believe this is a comprehensive talent issue. I think it's a rivalry game, pressure cooker issue. I think it's a puckering issue. I think in these big games, Jim Harbaugh becomes David Duval in the final group with Tiger Woods in the final round of the Masters. He just puckers. That turnover we had after with the Tyree Kinnell interception, and then we run that outside pitch. I think Notre Dame had 74 people on the line of scrimmage, and I think Karan Higna got tackled back in Gary. Then we come back, we go off tackle against a 39-man front, and then by then that ended that drive. He puckers constantly. Then our guys, I think, take their cue off of him in these big games. They pucker.
Wait, you had advice for the fans?
Yes, I'm getting there. Okay.
Okay.
But this sets up my advice. Just trust me.
Come on, don't make me look like the rash.
I'm gonna bring it home. Okay. All right. I'm like Carl Lewis doing the national anthem. I'm gonna bring it home. I promise. Okay. But I think our players, too, just don't make the plays in these games that the other guys do. And that's why I think we as fans just should look at the program and say, we're Wolverines, man. We were here before you all got here. We're all going to be here after you were gone. We are coming every Saturday. We're watching every Saturday. Go Blue. But until you show us you can beat a ranked team on the road. This is essentially the program that's averaged 7.8 wins since 2007, so an 8-win program. And until you beat a ranked team on the road, we don't have any higher expectations than that's what we are until you guys show us that our expectations should be higher. This is a you problem, not an us problem.
To some extent, yes. And I'll say this. You know what's interesting, Steve, is Danny over here, I don't think she's ever seen Michigan football good. Or really good. I mean, you're 3 years old?
22.
22 years old. So Michigan has not won a Big Ten title since she was 8 years old in 2004.
Okay.
So it's a long time. So there is a level of expectation. You know, you're saying, yes, it's on them. I kind of turn around and say a little bit like, this is on me a little bit that I expected so much from Jim Harbaugh and expected so much from this Michigan football program. I took a big sigh right there because I don't know what to do with it. I don't know whether to keep my expectations really high and then be very frustrated and ticked off, disappointed when they don't beat them, or do I lower my expectations to a point of 8-4 is the bar here. You beat Ohio State once every 4 or 5 years, sweet. If you beat Michigan State 2 out of every 4 years or 2 out of every 5 years,
what about
awesome.
Twice every 15 years beating Ohio State? What do you think?
I mean, that's where they're at right now.
Yeah,
that's where they're at right now. I don't know whether I'm supposed to lower my expectations so that Michigan can meet them, or if I should keep my expectations and then be disappointed when Michigan doesn't meet them. And isn't that incredibly sad, Steve, that that's the two options I'm considering right now?
Yeah, I think we can have a broader conversation about when things are lined up the right way, what could it be? You know, I heard you and Zach having this conversation on your radio show today. And, you know, we have a lot of championships, and we did share a lot of them in an era where you didn't have one solitary champion. There's one national championship since 1948. You know, Bo did have, I think, 16 teams, I believe, to finish in the final top 10 of either the AP or UPI polls. But that was also an era where Purdue, Wisconsin, and a lot of these programs, I mean, Purdue and Northwestern have some of the best facilities in the United States now with the upgrades that they have made. So I think it's unrealistic for us as Michigan fans to believe we can have, unless you get a Nick Saban, and there's one of those a generation. Unless you get that, the idea that you're going to win a championship every year, look how great Urban Meyer's record is. He doesn't win the Big Ten championship every year. I do think, though, we should go into that Ohio State game. This is, to me, what I think ought to be where if things worked out right, which is a reasonable expectation, on an annual basis, or at the very least 3 out of every 4 years, and maybe one of those years you have a roster turnover like last year with 10 new starters on defense and you're 7-5, 8-4, fine. But at least 3 out of 4 years in a player cycle, we go into that Ohio State game at the end of the year, and there's Big Ten championship implications on the line for us. That at the very least, you are contending for championships. And I think there's no reason, even with the diminished demographics in the Midwest, the increase in the competitive level in the Big Ten, there is no reason why that can't be accomplished, but it's not going to be accomplished until they prove they can beat a ranked team on the road, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said is true. I'm really struggling, Steve. I'll tell you that. I don't know what to do with my expectations for this program. What you just said, 3 out of every 4 years, they should go into that Ohio State game with a chance to win the division and go to the Big Ten championship. And I would certainly like to believe that. And if you really look at it, I mean, in 2016, they had that opportunity. They didn't a year ago. They didn't in 2015. But where are they going to be in 2018? Mm-hmm. I'm trying to sit back and say, okay, as upset as you were after the Notre Dame game, take a step back, see how this season unfolds. To me, this season, the way that it unfolds the rest of the way, Steve, is going to determine what I do with my expectations for this program underneath Jim Harbaugh going forward, because we're all in agreement that Michigan's not getting rid of Jim Harbaugh. The only way that Jim Harbaugh is leaving if he decides to chooses to leave on his own. So if there are 10 more years of Jim, I'm making my decision of what this program is going to be based off of how he responds to this setback, because this was a setback, a big-time setback. But you and I talked about it. This was the second half of the South Carolina game was the first half of the Notre Dame game on Saturday, and that was unacceptable. In 8 months, they hadn't made significant progress on the offensive line, third down defense, getting off the field, making plays when plays are there to be made. So no, I'm waiting to see how do they respond from this. And there's been a couple of positive, encouraging things this week. People talking about how 4 out of the last 5 Big Ten championship teams lost one of their first 2 games of the season. The fact that, yes, it was on the road, it wasn't Notre Dame. So there is still some possibility of getting better. But I've got to see it. I mean, and I'm not going to see it. I don't know about you, Danny, but like the Western, SMU, Nebraska, Northwestern, Maryland games, that ain't going to do anything for me. It's until they play Wisconsin and Michigan State and get in October. They make it through the rest of they get to October 27th when that bye week is, and they haven't lost another game. You're going to find a believer in me. But if they make it to end of October and they've got 2 more losses on their belt, then all bets are off about how I respond to this program and how I talk on sports on my show.
When you talk about the result on Saturday, the game actually wasn't much different than I thought. I predicted a 21-14 score. I didn't think the offense would be that great. I thought there'd be some growing pains. Shea Patterson's not played live action since last October. These are all new teammates. You're on the road. You know, I've been to a Michigan Notre Dame game in South Bend. I was there in 2004 with one of my listeners who is an usher on campus, and we were there on campus the whole day. Tremendous atmosphere. Had a great time. I listened to the Notre Dame pregame show. That was Ty Willingham's last year, and they had his ass fired before the game started. We go in there with Henny Hart, Gabe Watson, that was Braylon Edwards. That was our last Big Ten championship team that year. We lose to them. I mean, guys our age, Michael, have seen very good Michigan teams go in here and lose. It's not the loss, it's the product. I'm looking at the product on the field. And you said something interesting. This looked like the second half of the Outback Bowl. It looked like the second half at Ohio State. It looked like the second half against Wisconsin. It looked like every game we lost last year. And that, to me, is what I am the most concerned about, is the product on the field. When you had 8 months to address some of these issues. And my other concern is, what is our offensive scheme? Because it looks to me like we're trying things. We're running a speed option. I don't know why. We come out running an RPO and then we go to a power set. It kind of reminds me of, is this like Madden? Where you run the global playbook? What is our brand? What are we doing? What plays lead to setting things up? And I haven't really seen that in the Michigan offensive playbook since Wilton Spate's injury at the end of 2016, where you could watch it like an orchestra, a symphony. You could see plays were building on things they were setting up they were going to do later on. I don't see any of that rhythm at all. It just seems like, and maybe Danny, you disagree, but it seems to me like we're just trying stuff out there.
Well, do you know who was calling the plays back in 2016?
Jed Fish, Jim Harbaugh, those guys, yeah.
Jed Fish is my second dad. So I've talked to him about this.
Really? What do you have to say?
No, I'm not going to say a whole lot.
Yeah.
I won't say a whole lot. But I was just talking to a former player yesterday. In that 2016 Harbaugh's first year, it was Coach Fish calling plays. It was Coach Drebno calling plays. And it was Coach Harbaugh. But the majority of it was Coach Drebno, Coach Fish making those play calls. Now it's almost solely Coach Harbaugh. And you'll hear it from people, he needs to loosen the reins on calling the plays. Because as you've seen the last 3 years, it's just not working. That first year with Jake Rudolph, where he went and set a bunch of records for Michigan as quarterback, that was Coach Fish and Coach Drebno calling the majority of those plays. So I think that's a big difference, and I think that's a quick, easy fix. Like Coach Pat Hamilton.
Not a quick, easy fix because they got rid of Jed Fish.
Right.
So
yes, I'm already seeing on Instagram and Twitter the bring back Jed Fish. Yeah.
He's not doing anything right now, right? He's not doing anything right now.
He's not. He's a senior analyst for the LA Rams offense. Okay. So he's not in a coordinating or coaching position, but he's an analyst right now.
I would, if I was Michigan and it doesn't work out this year, Steve, I would get the Briggs truck and I would back it right up to his driveway, and I would dump whatever gold and cash onto his driveway and say, "Hey, Jed, look, We screwed up. I'm sorry. You're going to have complete autonomy over this offense. It's yours. Come back here, help us out. But, Steve, the problem is, do you ever think Jim Harbaugh is going to relinquish that type of control to a guy on the offensive side of the ball like he does on the defensive side of the ball? I don't.
I go back to what Mark D'Antonio said. He opened up his press conference after they beat us again last year. And I'll never forget this, man, because I felt like donkey. You cut me deep, Shrek. You cut me deep. And he opened up his press conference and he said, Michigan ran 43 different formations in the first half and scored 3 points. Right? Right?
Yeah.
I will never forget that. And I think that is, that's a metaphor for where we're at. I think the Zach Gentry play, I talked about this in the open. You have a 6'8", 260-pound tight end who's hand fighting rather than posting somebody up, sticking that butt in the air, and positioning himself to outfight a guy who's a Navy transfer for the football. We got a lot of guys that look really pretty in uniform. But where's the scrapping? Where's the clawing?
The thing, too, is that he wasn't even an Army transfer. The guys that are good with their hands. He's a Navy guy that's on a boat all the time. I mean, come on.
Exactly. This is the thing.
They do tie knots.
They tie some
Okay,
knots.
I'll give her that. They do tie knots. So.
To me, it's like Michigan football, for me, it's becoming like if I just lived on Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, my absolute favorite candy bar. And it's great for a while. But then, you can only have so many of them. You're like, I need a steak, man. I need some real food here. And that's what this is like. We roll up great stats against scrubs, even the 2016 team. I mean, that team was a lot of fun to watch. But when you look at that year at the end of the year, they didn't really accomplish anything meaningful. They lost the Orange Bowl, lost to Ohio State, lost to Iowa. What do all those games have in common? They didn't make plays. They drop a touchdown and a first down against Iowa, the pick six against Ohio State, the holding call on the screenplay in that game against Florida State. You come all the way back to take the lead, and then you let them run the kickoff back past midfield. And then Jordan Lewis, maybe the only time in his career he got beat one-on-one for a touchdown was in the last play of that game. I mean, over and over again, we watch the other guys make plays. So when we play lesser teams, unless Indiana, for some reason they play their manhood off against us, but when we play every other lesser team, we dominate them. We're going to destroy Western Michigan on Saturday. It's going to be name the score Saturday in Ann Arbor. When we play teams that can physically match up with us, though, we pucker. And their guy, Akram Wadley, makes the big play, and Jehu Chesson can't catch a first down pass. This is routine in all of these big games, starting with that punt drop against Michigan State. And after a while, I think you do have to look at the head coach and say, why don't our guys play loose and aggressive in these scenarios? Well, when the head coach comes off a turnover in his first two, when we were growing up, after a turnover, what was Lloyd Carr going to do? Regardless of who the offensive coordinator, what did you know Michigan was going to do after they got a turnover on defense, Michael? Every time, play action, go for the bomb when you had your daubers down. Every time, right? We come out and run the first two downs against the Soviet bloc defensive front. And I think your players look at that and they say, I don't think he's got a lot of confidence in us. I think it's a cultural issue in these big games. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I'll say this, and I don't know about your history, but this is, bear with me for a second. I coach an 8th grade basketball team. You've heard me talk about this before. I'm not relating coaching 8th grade basketball.
Danny is laughing. I think it's hilarious. She's hey, the middle-aged guy is talking about his 8th grade basketball team. Yes, please drop some knowledge on us, please. Yes.
I coach at St. Francis, actually where Jim Harbaugh sends his kids. And I've coached for 4 years. I have had 4 incredibly talented rosters that I've had the chance to work with. Some real impressive young men. And I know that we have skill. And when my first year, I went into a championship game and we got our butts kicked. And after the game, I thought to myself, were those kids that much better than us? Or did I not do a good enough job getting my kids prepared? And it was the latter. And then the second year, the same thing happened. We made it to the championship of our league and we lost. And we lost to a team that I thought was slightly less talented than we were. And I thought to myself, my God, this is it. This is coaching. I am not, either my game plans are not as good, or what I really thought was happening is I was not mentally getting my kids ready to play their best basketball. in those moments. I think that's what's happening with Jim Harbaugh. He's not getting his guys play their best football when games matter the most. And that is you can talk about game plans, you can talk about development, you can talk about recruiting, all those different things. But in some of the really important games, and this is something that I think Mark Antoni's done a really good job with in the past. Dabo Sweeney right now does a good job. James Franklin's done a really good job at Penn State. When you're playing in those critical big games and you've got to have the W, your team needs to make more plays than they do. You've got to get them in the right state of mind. And so far, we haven't seen Jim Harbaugh get his guys in the right state of mind.
Danny, I'll give you the last word. You seem to be chomping at the bit while Mike Spath and I go back and forth karaokeing Bruce Springsteen's Glory Days.
I can't believe that two grown men do this every week.
Yes.
It's so fun.
You have any parting words of wisdom for us, Danny?
Be patient.
Yes, be patient to all the Michigan fans. I would love for the Ole Miss fans to get out of my Twitter mentions. And I just hope that Coach Harbaugh lets Pep Hamilton call someplace this upcoming weekend.
Danny, it was great to meet you. Thanks for joining us this week. Michael, good to have you back here on Michigan Podcast.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
More Michigan Podcast here in a moment. Coming soon. That's all I can say right now, but stay tuned. You're going to be seeing that logo more often here, and we'll tell you what it means soon. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you, true or false, your enthusiasm for Michigan football is not what it once was, and you have accepted mediocrity. 2/3 of you have said true to that, 2/3. And I think the answer should be true until they tell us we're anything other than an 8-win program. That's what you are. I mean, it's the great prophet Bill Parcells used to say, you are what your record says you are. And since 2007, this has been a team that's an 8-win program. It's like 7.8 wins. So you round it off, it's 8 wins. That's what it's been. And until they beat a ranked team on the road, which they haven't done since the year before that, 2006, you're not going to win more than 8 games on average. You're not going to win any championships. So it's up to them to prove to us. I said here at the top of the show, it is up to them to prove to us that we should expect more than what they have offered us for the last 10 plus years. Which brings us to this week's question of the week. At Trust the Khakis wants to know, why am I throwing in the towel after one game? Well, define throwing in the towel. I'm not missing a game. I love my team. I've been here for 35 years. I was here when Harbaugh was dunking on Michigan for not being as strong academically as it claimed. I was here for Rich Rod. I was here for 6-6 when I was 12. I'm not going anywhere. But I can't ignore reality either. And even if you're a fan who thinks critically, and I'm a contrarian by nature, you have to understand, be self-aware. What kind of fan are you? So I'm a fan that tries to think critically, but because of that, when I think there's evidence of positivity, I will get too emotionally positive. And when I think there's evidence of negativity, I will get too emotionally negative. That's why I think we all just take a step back, remove all of that, stop splitting each other's spleens open on social media and message boards, and just turn around and say, we love our team, go blue. You guys prove to us you're better than this. And until you do, there's no point in us raising our own expectations and asking something of you as a football program you're not able to provide. So we're there every Saturday when these players come and go. They move on with the rest of their lives, and some become captains of industry. Some go on to have troubled lives. But whatever the case may be, we're the constant. We stay. We remain. We're here every Saturday. That's not going to change. What needs to change, though, are the expectations we have for what the outcome of those Saturdays is going to be when they're all said and done. Because there's no point in having really lofty expectations until this program proves to us it's capable of meeting them. Well, you can keep in touch with us throughout the course of the week by following us on Twitter at Michigan Podcast. You can also like us on Facebook under Michigan Podcast as well. I want to thank our friends and partners at Detroit Sports Podcast who help us to spread the word about this show each and every week. Please like us here on Facebook, on YouTube. Leave us a comment, subscribe here on our YouTube channel. You can do the same on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher as well. Until next week, go blue.